Yeah.
So there we go.
All right, we are live. Welcome and good night to everyone. This is episode 116, and tonight we are featuring Guro Chris, and it's going to be a kind of a show and tell tonight. We're going to go over his journey, and then we're going to go into the Hog Mountain Tool and Tactical. He's going to showcase and show us some of his creations. And I got a couple pictures to show for folks that want to look, find it on Facebook and all that. And so some good stuff and all that. So if you are watching, please tell us where you're watching from. Hit the like button. And by all means, hit like and subscribe to FMA Discussion, where you'll see this interview and other great ones.
Canned intro. Very nice.
But well, welcome. Thank you for coming on. I always appreciate that. Absolutely. People that take time out of their schedule to come on, and you got little ones there. So but thank you.
They're a mess. Absolutely. No, this is super cool. This is something my wife and I, we're stressed out. We work a lot, and we got 2 little kids, and it's something like when she needs her time. She's an amateur writer, so when she needs her time, I make sure I get the kids out of the house, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys got a kind of nice. Yeah, a nice working system there.
Absolutely.
It can be tough.
Yeah, you need time to be creative. You can't just, not everybody can just pull it out of their hat. You got to sit there and scratch your chin and be like, what am I going to do?
Yeah, and then, what are you going to write? And you got screaming in the background. That's always conducive for good writing, huh?
Not so much, especially with the romance and stuff that she writes, them ladies in those romance novels.
So. Man, on this sultry evening.
Exactly. Bleeding child or something.
All right, we got 8 folks are watching already. Please, again, if you didn't hear the intro, please tell you where you're watching from. If you've got questions, by all means, let me know, and we're going to start. I'm going to particularly, really, I enjoy all the interviews, but this one, it kind of, I think there's going to be some parallel similarities in that you bounce around like me, so I think I'm going to be sort of interviewing myself too.
An uglier, longer hair version, yes.
Yeah. So, well, let's hear it first. So, where, I guess, who, where, and when was your first FMA exposure?
My first coach was actually the first time I ever heard of Filipino knife fighting. I used to work at a fancy steakhouse down in Buckhead, and I'd wrestled all my life from 4th grade until college. And one of my dear friends in the neighborhood, his dad was like one of those super sicko Navy SEAL types. They had the first mansion in our neighborhood, and they had a limo. So we go to monster truck shows and stuff in this limo with our buddy. Well, he slept through every class we had in high school. And somehow ended up, now he's a multinational restaurant mogul. So something, bright kid. But he was living in like Taiwan or something like that, studying Jingyi and Bagua. And he came home through California. And as he got back to Atlanta, we kind of, we're all in the neighborhood still. We're about 20 something. And he was like, hey, let's meet up at this guy's yard, and I'll show you some of the cool stuff I've been working on. And I really like the Bagua and stuff, but he made this comment about, Chris, you should see the Filipino knife fighters. Those guys can walk under a table with their back straight. And I'm like, what the hell is Filipino knife fighting? So my little imagination just took off and ran with it. And I'd never, that was like, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. I was, my father was a gun dealer when I was very small. So most of my toys were hunting and fishing objects, knives, guns. I think I got my first 30-30 when I was like 10, rifle. And I got a pocket knife at 5, blah, 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 all this stuff. So to get an idea that people were actually training with real knives and wow, this exotic idea of these Filipino crazy men slicing and dicing each other kind of set in with me. And his name was Johnny Kunkel. He owns a Yardbird down in Miami and Singapore and all these other places. So John Kunkel, we trained together for maybe a year and a half, 2 more years at a reggae bar in downtown. We would do mostly Muay Thai and then the Chinese striking. And I was a bow tie guy. I wore a bow tie at the restaurant I worked in, and everybody else was a cop or a bouncer. So we were beating the hell out of each other. And then I'd have to clean up and go and serve, fine dining. And he bailed probably about 2005 or 6, and I switched careers over to valet parking, and my comfort zone seemed to be the adult nightclubs. And so I was up late, I was partying hard, and we fought all the time. I mean, there not a week went by without me grabbing someone or strangling or punching or something like that. And I knew my number was coming up. I knew that I had been running on luck for a long time. And the club that I was at in 2008, I mean, God, my time is all wrong. In 1998, was right next to the house of a pro wrestler named Raven. And he was big WWE guy, and I think he was WCW before that. And I hated that guy. I know he's not listening, but he was always such a putz to me. And all of his friends are really cool. So I would pick on him because they can't fight. They have these licenses when they go to the guilds. They can't fight in the street or anything like that. They lose their ability. You're Connecticut. Wrestling's huge up there.
Yeah.
And so I would always pick on this Raven guy. He was the Eddie Vedder of wrestling or something, and I didn't like Eddie Vedder either. I'm sorry. But one night, a bunch of those dudes came around the corner, huge, 260-pound behemoths. And I'm this little scrawny, valet guy, and I'm ripping on them all. And then one of them I looked at, he looked like the sergeant from Small Soldiers, the toy movie, and or Toy Soldier, whatever it was. And I'm like, hey, your shirt says Muay Thai. I've done Muay Thai. Where are you training? Is that here in Atlanta? And he goes, I'm opening a gym right down the road here. You need to join us. And I said, when can I show up? And he said, be there tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning. I said, yes, sir. Well, those guys stayed till, 5:36 in the morning. I cleaned up, got home about 7. 10:30, I was banging on the door of this place he told me. And finally, somebody crawled out from under the counter and was like, go away. It's hungover. Come back next week. When? 10:30 on Wednesday. Okay. Next week, 10:30 on Wednesday, I'm banging on the door. I wanted Muay Thai, and I heard they also had American submission wrestling. So it's a wrestling background. I'm on it. Well, when they finally let me in, they were like, dude, you just won't go away, will you? And I was like, no, I really need this. I work at Flashers. I'm going to get my ass kicked or something. I need to train more. I need it. Let's go. And one of the janitors of all people was letting me in, and he was like, hey, look at this mat and look at this room. And oh, by the way, there's a really neat guy that just started last week, and he does Indonesian martial arts. And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, let me show you. Do you know how to do a jab cross? And I said, sure. And he grabbed my cross and threw me over his shoulder. And I was like, what kind of Jackie Chan crap was that? And he started laughing. He goes, it's called Silat. And we have a class in the mornings, this time and this time with this guy named Benjamin Salas. I think you'll like him. Well, turns out Benjamin and I knew each other through a pub in my neighborhood. And we would play the Tekken game, the video game together. And I was a little bit of a mouth, and I worked in the nudie bars, fought a lot, thought I was a badass or whatever. So when I laid eyes on him, I'm like, you're the guy from the Tekken game at Taco Mac. And he's like, yeah, you're a crazy guy. Come on, let's go. And we went through about 2 months of Harimau Silat, 3 days a week, from 10:30 until about noon, maybe 1, and showed me the karambit, all this stuff. And I was like, this is my joint. My wrestling background fits right into this, the tiger walk and all that stuff with Harimau. Let's do it. I love it. Let's go. And then about a month and a half, 2 months into it, he was like, you need to get a pair of sticks, Chris. And I was like, for what? And he goes, this is legitimately a stick fighting class from the Filipino martial arts, Kali, blah, blah, blah. And then I remembered my friend Johnny, and I was like, Filipino knife fighting? And he goes, yeah, basically.
Okay.
I was like, all right, I've been waiting for this one. So let's do it. And he says, look, I'll sell you these sticks. If you don't like it, I'll buy them back from you, and we can still play Tekken at the bar. I said, hey, what do I got to lose? And I still have those sticks in my bag here in the garage. And that was, 23 years, April of 98. And about a year later, we brought Steve Tirani in for some seminars. I luckily was crashing a wedding in Northern England, so I didn't get a chance to meet him. But when I came home, I had a whole bunch of new stories about this wonderful, crazy guy, Steve Tirani. But then I started getting emails from Steve going, hey, man, I'm sorry I missed you, but I heard a lot of crazy stories about you. We need to get together and start working together. So I was working with Benjamin and Steve through about 2000, maybe 3, something like that. And then I started traveling out to California to work with Benjamin. With Tarani in Huntington Beach in Costa Mesa area.
Wow.
And so my vacations were I would fly out, hit Costa Mesa, hit Huntington Beach, and then he tied me in with the guys at Strider Knives. And with Strider, I actually introduced Dwayne of Strider Knives to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's now a 3rd degree black belt in Gracie Baja.
Oh,
and
wow.
I kind of hooked him up with his coach Nelson Montieros, and they just became the best friends in the world. So I became kind of like a sponsored guy from Strider. I would work their tables at Blade Show here in Atlanta, starting in probably about 2000, 2001. I was a table guy. And anything I wanted, they're like, dude, anything on the table you want, take it home with you. When I started dating my wife, she was a Thai boxer. We had Chuck Mulwiney, the Navy sniper or the Marine sniper that got all those guys. I don't know if you're familiar with that story. It's a really, really amazing guy. He would come to the fights and watch my wife fight in the morning. What's that?
No, name sounds familiar.
Okay, he and Carlos Hathcock were kind of like teetering back and forth between like most popular kill and most effective, and that's scary stuff to me. But they made a couple History Channel shows on Chuck, and then I believe the Sniper School has the Chuck Mulwiney Challenge where you have to hit 16 balloons in 30 seconds, and you try to figure out what the balloons were.
So when you were, I just got a question for you. When you first, Steve Tarani, I want to tap into him, but before I get into him. Your first exposure there, did he tell you where his style was, what the style was, or
with Benjamin? He did, and it was he had mentioned that it was Mande Muda, Harimau Silat under Guru Basir, Pa Herman, Sawanda.
Oh yeah, that. But like I guess the FMA aspect. Did he?
Yeah, but when we got into it, he did mention that, and this is a weird thing. Benjamin's an amazing guy. He's a guy you should probably track down. This dude, he's off the charts. But he was with Guru Ted Lukai, and Guru Ted passed away, if I'm not mistaken, like at the end of March in like 97 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a bad year.
He switched over to Guru Edgar Salite, and Edgar Salite passed away at the end of March. In like 98 or something like that.
Illustration.
And so as I was working with Benjamin, I can't hear you very well. Was that?
No, I'm sorry. That was a bad year. 97.
Oh yeah. And so with Salite passing, Benjamin kind of started moving everything over to Inasano. And he had worked with, I believe his first coach was named John Failing out of maybe Madison, Wisconsin. I'm not quite sure. I just know the guy looked like Gallagher, the guy with the Sledge-O-Matic is what I was told. I hope he does. Because I don't want to put that on anybody. But he had mentioned Inasano, and I had no idea who that was. And then, it was like, read these books. And that's where, we talked yesterday about Mark Wiley. And Benjamin was really good about the culture and the history. Now, we fast forward to 2020, 2018, stuff like that. We found out some of this history may not always be spot on.
Yeah.
And that's more the Hog Mountain side of things is learning more about the actual culture and the actual, what blade goes with what style and things like that.
Province and
Yeah. The wavy bladed Chris was on my t-shirt for the longest time. And my blade consultant, I have this amazing blade consultant at Hog Mountain, and he's like, you guys don't do that. You count in Spanish. Moros don't, stuff like that.
I know.
It got into I got some enemies, I guess, now because of that stuff. But as we were going through the transition from the Lukai to Salite Lameko into Lacoste Inasano, I was kind of just like, hey, I'm cool, whatever. This is different. Show me more, and I just I've never really been curious about rank or learning, I want to get this next thing for my passions have always been myself. So I'm kind of like, a little self-absorbed. And I'm like, I don't really need anything to make me sound better or more interesting or dumber or what, or crazier, because I'm already out there throwing my stuff in the wind. So it's never really rank oriented. And to some extent, Benjamin caught on to that early. And he found that I also learned everything in reverse, that he would take his evening classes through, like angles 1 through 12 and inside deflection. And then, maybe, 1 or 2 like single stick contrada drills or something. And then with us in the morning, it was like, okay, dude, you're going to learn 64 different Sinawali patterns before noon. And we're going to see if you can do it again tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's go. And it was not that I'm wonderful or anything like that, but I like I said the other day, I'm a special ed kid. So I kind of process a little different than most folks. And that tactile learning, it wasn't so slow, it was fast. It kept me going and kept my attention on him. And he kind of guided my path a little differently than the other guy. There was another kid in our group named Stephen Duraney, who's also a guru under Benjamin. And Stephen was really methodical. And he was the guy that went under Guru in Asano, where my Lakang Guru, or whatever you want to call it, my title is under Benjamin himself, is no one else.
Okay.
So with all that, it was kind of like, this is neat, but I want to learn more. And who taught you this? Oh, that's cool. He sounds like a great guy. Maybe I'll travel out and meet him one year. And I did. I spent 7 summers at the Inasano Academy for at least, 4 or 5 classes a week for 2 weeks a year going out there. And I found that no one likes the outsider. No one likes a 180 to a 200-pound, 6-foot-tall white boy that's like, hey, when are we sparring? And stuff like that. That guy doesn't really make a lot of friends.
No, not at the academy in the late 90s, early 2000s. Now, if you were around in the late 70s, early
different
80s,
story.
We'd be having a different conversation.
Yeah, someone like Paul Vunak would have flattened me, or something like that.
But yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But I would see those guys on like the Santa Monica Pier in their full gear with their notebook going over, last night's classes. And I'd be like, hey, you're Spin from, blah, blah, blah. And they would just look at me. And I'd be like, okay, I'm getting out of here. And, so I had friends in the neighborhood that were right down from the new and current academy. And so when he moved up there, I would just ride their bike, sticks on my shoulder, I'd pedal over there, take a couple classes and move on. But with my travel schedule, I spent a lot of time there on the weekends. So I got a chance to train with Mark Denny, who was terrifying and entertaining and everything all at once. And I spent about, 4 or 5 classes with Guru Victor Gindrano, who ultimately became my instructor from 2008 until 2018 when he passed away. So that was a great meeting for me. So Benjamin was a great launch pad. He did well enough to give me a good foundation to where I could go into another system like we talked about last night. I could speak a different language. Why? Oh, we do thousands of abanicos. So I fit in with Tom Sippen and the WEKAF guys just instantly. I showed up at their place and was like, oh, this is what we're doing. Oh, cool. I can do that. Or show me again. Yeah. And that kind of stuff was really good, where some of the people that are very species specific with their FMA struggle when they get outside of their little world, I found.
Yeah, I know. That's true, though. Like you brought up, where like if they haven't been exposed, to different people, different systems, it can be, I don't know if it can be a little uncomfortable, intimidating. You don't know where to fit in, and what I mean. And it could be. Yeah, it could be unsettling. You know what I mean? And
it's happened to me. I've been in seminars where the instructor was like, "Don't ever talk to my student like that again. And if you say anything like that, I'm going to kick you out of here." All right, fair enough.
Yeah, that's fine. I've never experienced that, but then again, so that would be a new one. But I got to say hello to some people here, Chris.
Oh, cool.
We got Maestro Alvin. We got Scott from Canada. Brian. We got Thomas from England. Guru Tom. We got Sam from Quebec. Frank from Connecticut. And Felix from Texas. And Guru Paul, who is in Florida. All right. If you're just checking in, you're watching, please tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget that.
That's awesome.
Like button. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so it sounds like, just to kind of recap for those who jumped in, he was your starting platform. Through him, though, you kind of, got exposed to other people via the academy. I too did a weekend. I flew out to go see Mark Denny. That was definitely interesting, and and all that. And so I just want to curl back just a bit, because one of the guys I have to get on here. I'm a LeMayco fanatic. I just think that system. I'm under David Gould. Yeah, yeah, David Gould. And I'm just again just fascinated with it. But the problem is, obviously, as we all know, this COVID situation hasn't been a lot happening. But with Steve, though, I hear just incredible things about him. Like, what did you like? Your training with him, just for the folks that maybe who don't know. I gotta get him on here. Matter of fact, I gotta write his name down. Like, what did you guys focus on? What was
in the beginning, when he would come see us, it was mostly the sea lot. And that it was kind of like, okay, I've got, 7 people that want to do stick fighting that are, they're good students and they're great friends and they're helping. But then I got this daytime kid who has nothing but money and spare time. I made a ton of cash at the nudie bar, and I only really worked like 3 nights a week. So it was all time for partying and training. Just like what you guys said with McGrath. If your money is made and you're happy with your job, you can be the best martial artist on the planet. But if you got to feed yourself and your family,
if you don't got
you're
wife,
limited.
You don't got kids, you got no dependents.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you can just, hey, I'm on a plane. I'm going to Wisconsin. Why? To fight. What? But we got into when Steve really launched, and the story with him was he was one of Herman Sawanda's like inner circle guys in the States. And as it was delivered to me, I could be wrong. I've been told all kinds of stories.
No, I've heard similar. Okay,
so Sawanda would say, okay, I want you to show the world a kujang. You show them how the kujang works, and you the tankat or the spear or whatever. I want you to show them. And Steve, I want you to be the guy that's in charge of showing the karambit to America. And so this was all brand new, not only to me, but to the tactical world. We were using like Smith & Wesson knives that had the thick ass handle, barely fit in your pocket. Yeah, there wasn't really much out there. There was Spyderco.
Yeah, Spyderco.
Spyderco with the thumb screw and the pin clip on it.
There was a knife and back then.
Those Smith & Wesson knives. I was dating a girl from Kennesaw, a local town. That Brigade Quartermasters was one of their big areas, and that Tactical Ted, catalog company. And she would bring me stuff all the time. And she's like, this is called a tactical knife. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is awesome. But it barely fit in my pocket. It's like putting a potato in there. And so when Steve shows up, all the guys are like, what in the heck is that thing? It's a karambit. And so we were kind of like test dummies on a lot of Steve's curriculum. I'm assuming he had some great guys in California to work with.
Yeah,
but he would come down and work with Benjamin for hours. He'd never had sweet tea before. And when he came to Atlanta, they'd take him to Chick-fil-A and he'd get 2 gallons of sweet tea. And they would drink that stuff and train until midnight.
Yeah.
And then wake up in the morning and do the next day of the seminar or whatever was going on. But as the video series, the book Naked Edge, the book Karambit, all this stuff was coming on, he used Benjamin and Brian Everett, one of my Knife or Death brothers, as his kind of his ookies in those books. So I would be the guy that Benjamin would say, I got to work with Steve next weekend. I'm flying to California. You're going to be the bad guy. And that always hurt. So I had to go through, the Malaysian surfboard and all these terrible techniques that hurt so badly. And Benjamin, being under Herman Sawanda as well, it wasn't like he was fumbling through a video or looking on his phone going, hang on, let me look again. He had a lot of this stuff already dialed in to begin with. So it was great, kind of like a master class for me to be his tackling dummy to practice for these videos and for these book shoots and stuff. So the beginning was let's introduce the karambit to the world. Let's get some good guys out here. And then I guess serendipitously, the Blade Show is here in Atlanta. Yeah. So Steve hired us to be his demo people for the karambit.com booth. And then his cousins who worked at one of the nudie bars I worked at, Michelle, and some of her coworkers to be the first like Blade Show bunnies or booth bunnies or whatever they call them. Oh my gosh. So we had super hot chicks. We had these exotic knives that were made by Strider. Blade Tech was making the Journeyman and the master level folders that he did with the back lock, bar none. You know, sorry everybody else. Best karambit out there, that Blade Tech. I've got the master upstairs. It's insane. Strongest lock out there.
Well, I gotta check that out.
We would just throw people around. Hey, you want to see what this thing does? Can you punch? Yeah, okay. Throw them on the ground. And we kind of made a name for ourselves from some of the other martial artists didn't like us at all. The other guys, no, those guys, whatever. My stuff is better. And we were like, but Steve's the guy who's doing all this, and he brought us in. So is that okay? Yeah. And as the world kind of progressed, those guys, Benjamin and Steve, actually went on to start their own company in 2003. Yeah. In 2004, Operational Skills Group, where they were teaching military law enforcement. They kind of got into that operator contractor business. And Benjamin shot off to a sandbox in parts unknown. And Steve hooked up with the CIA and worked for the government for, I think he recently retired from them maybe 3 years ago, something like that.
Wow. But I got to get a hold of him. I got to get him on here. Absolutely. And folks who are listening, just for folks who know this, or if you don't know this, I'm not saying you don't. Everybody thinks that Ray, Dionaldo or Mercada were the original karambit guys. No. Steve Tarani was the guy who brought the karambit to the forefront, and
absolutely,
and, so man, I gotta get him on. I'm so glad.
Oh yeah, the thing about it is, he's so horribly intelligent. It's beyond and he and another guy. If you read, I believe it's his books. Guru Dan always called this one guy Paul. Or no, called him Bubba or something like that. I believe his name is Paul Grabo. And Paul is a fantastic artist in Huntington Beach area, Southern Cal. And they both had the long hair. They called them the Bong Brothers. And those two knuckleheads back in the 80s and early 90s would travel all over. Tarani's an instructor in Lameco. He's an instructor in Giron's Mahalana.
Yeah.
And in Asano, Manimuna Silat, I'm gonna get in trouble big time. He's the only guy I've known in all the martial arts world to say Steven Seagal is the most legit dude when it comes to Aikido I've ever run into. That guy is scary. And I'm looking at him like, what? All this crap I read on the internet? Like, no, man.
No kidding. I would have never guessed that.
Serious. And there were pictures. I would go to Steve's training lab, the Zone. It was basically like what do you call it? A storage bin with an office in the front of it. We don't really have them here in Georgia. But I would sleep there at night. When I would go, I would either sleep on Jerry Huffman, who was his old business partner at West Coast Academy. I would sleep on Jerry's floor, or on Steve's, a garage or whatever the hell this thing was. One time he's like, you can stay here, but I'm leaving town. See you later. Here's the key. And I got back from partying that night, and there was a car parked over my little air mattress. And I'm like, what the fuck? He'd parked his car in my bed. So, yeah, I mean, it was total vagabond stuff for me. But, with Steve, he was all over. The little joke was that he and Paul would have to clean all the beer cans off the mat before the kids' classes would start in the morning. And, influences being what they are, when I was training with Jerry Huffman, or Jerry Gill, I guess was his name when he was in Asano, super good guy, great shooter, great grappler, loves Silat, doesn't think it works at all. I don't know. He may have changed his mind since then, but I would wake up in the morning to parents banging on the door at the International Kickboxing Academy in Costa Mesa, and have to clean up everything that I left on the mat before I passed out. there the night before and stuff. And that was what Steve and Grabo were doing. And it was really cool just to sit down with him and listen, and the philosophy that he studied a lot of Eastern philosophies and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's very measured with his tone. He's very, not so much monotone, but he just speaks at a very concise and consistent level. He looks at you a lot with his eyes to see if you're there. And, the last time I saw him, I guess it was 2018, he called me and said, I'm in town for the NRA. I'm a keynote speaker. Do you have a set of any Espada Adaga? Maybe 2. And I was like, sure, I make this stuff, Steve. What do you want? And he goes, just grab 2 sets of Espada Adaga and meet me at the hotel. And so I went down to the hotel, and we stood by the pool at the Sheraton in, Midtown or downtown Atlanta. And he was like, let me show you what Tony Diego showed me the last time I was in the Philippines. And we went through this insane stuff. I mean, I was trying my best to keep up with him. Yeah. But it was wild, just insane guy.
Yeah.
And I don't do him any justice. And same with Salas. I don't do them justice at all when I tell stories about them, because those guys, and I said that the other day, I can't carry these guys nuts in a wheelbarrow because of the stuff they've done, the places they've been. If we move on, but the last thing for Steve, when I saw him, I guess it was about 2009. No, probably about 2012. He was at Blade Show, but he called me and he said, look, I'm only going to be there for a couple hours. I need to meet you in the front lobby. Sure. So it's nighttime. Everybody's in this thing called the pit. We're all partying and all this other stuff. My phone goes off. Hey, Tarani's here. Cool. Now the party's already here. He's here. So he's like, come on. We walk into this bathroom, and if you've ever go to Blade Show, the Sheraton has this giant bathrooms. And so we walk all the way down this hallway in the bathroom, and he's like pushing on doors. They're all locked. He finds an open one. He ushers me into the bathroom, and I'm like, look, man, I don't want to be a guru that bad. It's like, I don't know what you got in mind for me, bro. Yeah. And he's like, no, you haven't seen me in a while, have you? And I was like, no, I haven't. And he goes, I brought you a present. And he handed me a little challenge coin from the CIA. I'm like, oh, this is super cool. He's like, put that in your pocket. I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow.
And he hands me a patch. CIA, special operator, all this other stuff. I'm like, oh, man, this thing's badass. Put that thing in your pocket. I'm like, all right, cool. And then he hands me a wallet. And I open it up, and he's like, check it out. And I'm looking at it, and it's his credentials. And he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, okay. And he goes, no, look at it, read it. And down at the bottom, it said for like special and unusual duties. And I'm like, what the hell? No, you know what? I don't want to know what that means.
Yeah.
And he's like telling me this story. And the whole time I'm holding this wallet, the first 2 things he gave me, he told me to put in my pocket. So a minute later, I'm like, put it in my pocket. And he's like, no, that's my wallet, Chris. You're going to have to give it back. And I was like, oh, I mean, shit, I don't know. You gave me all this other stuff. But he literally was like, I'm in a company car. I got a company hotel, and I got a company job. So I'm just going to go say my hellos, and then I got to get out of here.
I heard he was doing.
And that was the last I saw of him until about 2018.
Yeah, last I heard, he was doing government work. I mean, he was knee deep. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's going to be an interesting one to get on. I mean,
God, I tell you what, you would. It would be a good 2-hour block. I mean, again, the wealth of knowledge.
I'll separate.
He's an East Coaster like you. I think he's from. I want to say Delaware, but maybe even it's Connecticut. I can't remember the first couple colonies kind of screw with my head.
Can you find out where he lives?
What's that?
Can you find out where he lives?
I'll read. I mean, his base is Virginia now, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that would make sense. C.I. Langley or something. You know what I mean?
Because he's still working with them, and then he works with NRA. He was doing a big. They were. What's that?
Find out if you could. If he's in Connecticut, man, I gotta hunt him down.
Now, I tell you, because of that government stuff, we tried to get him in for a seminar a few years ago, and it is spendy.
Oh my! I can't even imagine.
Because he's like, "Hey, man, the government trained me. The government kind of has my, a leash on me. So if I do anything outside of their spectrum, it's pretty spendy."
No, I bet. Yeah, no.
But
wow, that's
just a wonderful guy. I mean, the wealth of knowledge, being in his house, sitting on his couch and looking at all the pictures on the wall and stuff. Or like I stayed at the Zone, you got pictures of him and legendary, FMA guys. the best is seeing the photos of him in the books of like Giron or with Panaguro Salite, where he's got his knees bent and he's like hunched over, and they're still reaching up to get him because the guy's like 6'4".
I was gonna say he's tall, right? He's tall, yeah.
Massive guy. What really kind of like set him into another like level, and this was a story I got from the Strider guys, was I believe they were at SHOT Show in Vegas or maybe a show in LA, and someone was pestering him, and he just was like, you know, leave me alone, and they kept pestering, and it was another tactical Ted guy or something like that. They were doing some training off to the side, and this guy was just all in Steve's business, and he just dropped right at a Hog Mountain, did the knee pull, and threw the guy on the ground and stood up and was like, if I have to keep going, I'm going to keep going. And that guy, dinner plate eyes, like wetting stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
And everybody there was like, son of a, this guy's legit.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you see that? That massive man went straight to the ground at terminal velocity, hit his target, pulled the knee, stepped up that C-lot side position, and just, you know, cooked that guy's bread right there on the spot. And from then on, the guys that were like legit and you know, were writing checks and stuff were like,
oh yeah,
we like Steve. He can
that
pull it off.
Backyard group, man. You know what though? When you look at that backyard group, Roger, him, David Gould, Felix, the Flores, I mean Dino. I mean, man, that was a group, man. That was like
the stuff that they worked on, out of this world.
Yeah,
out of this world. We had elements of LeMaco in our system. But it was really, you know, because Benjamin was just kind of building his relation, if I'm not mistaken, he was kind of building his relationship with Guro Salite as you know, going to be an instructor. So he wasn't really, you know, that far in. But yeah, you know, that's something that for me, again, going back to the Wiley books, I'm reading about guys that my teacher is familiar with, getting phone calls from, you know, and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, I don't know where or how I found this dude. But damn, I'm glad I did. Salas really kind of put me on a path to maybe, you know, being alive today. The guys at the nudie bars and stuff, you know, they were doing a bunch of drugs. I never really got into that stuff. I drank way too much and I love to fight. But I was very uneducated. My college years were just partying and jumping out of windows into bushes and stuff like that and chasing girls. But, you know, he taught me how to learn. And that was the most valuable skill I think I picked up from FMA, was how to pay attention to someone and how to really comprehend what they're talking about. And not just, you know, I think I can figure it out myself.
Right. Take it for granted.
Being humble enough to say, I don't know, Dick, I need to listen.
Yeah, right. And ask questions and be at your glass. You know what I mean? And just, no. I mean, that is amazing. I just want to give a quick hello to some people who just jumped in.
Yeah.
We got Julius. All right. And let me just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. We got Aiden, all right, from England, and Maestro Carlito. I'm hoping you're better, sir. You know, prayers with you, Maestro. And all right. So wow. So when I guess when did you? I know you got instructorship and all that. Did you at any point kind of like make your own? I mean, like in other words, what do you currently teach? Is it a blend, or did you extract different things from different systems and what have you?
Well, when I got my instructorship in 2004, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe it was 2004. And that was right about the time Benjamin was leaving to go off and do his contractor work. And he basically said, I'm going to hand you this system. You've been doing it with me. I've been modifying it as we've gone along.
Okay.
You know everything in here except for maybe one or two little things. And you can always reach me if you have questions. And you have my blessing to go teach this. And I pretty much stick to that thing. I don't remember it by heart, but I stick to that. I will add elements of other systems. I spent a fair amount of time in the early teens with Tuan Dianaldo. He would come through Atlanta for Blade. I would host him for seminars and stuff like that.
Okay,
His buddy Jerry Hossam, the knife maker, and my dad worked with Jerry back in the 80s, so I've known his name since I was like 7. But he did some really kick-ass stuff with us, but he did one thing that I was like, wow, sir, can I have that? And he was like, yeah, and I used that one element that I picked up from Dianaldo in my stuff. The rest of it, I enjoy it. I trained it. If I see his guys, I love to work on it again. But as far as like what I teach, I kind of push everything back to my original curriculum. I mean, I have the same notebook Benjamin gave me and the same accordion folder that he gave me, and I just rip copies every once in a while.
I got you.
And so he would do things. Benjamin would say, you take this notebook, Chris, and make a copy of it, and then make another copy and leave the second copy in it when you give it back to me, so the next guy can have a copy.
Yeah. Oh, that was nice.
So
that was nice.
with very minor deviation, I got rid of the Orashion, the with heaven and earth as my witness, I stand for the creator and mankind. I kind of
from the blend,
let that one go a little bit.
From the blend.
But when I modernized, and then, where I taught also kind of dictated a little bit about what I wanted to do as well. When I was at the big MMA gyms at Knuckle Up is the same, or was the same building where I met Benjamin. So it used to be called Obaki Fight School, Bill Goldberg Obaki Fight School. I remember Bill Goldberg. Not only is he a pro wrestler, which I used to always antagonize, but he was also the host of Knife or Death. I got a chance to be on that knife show. And I was edited out of the first episode, but I'm still on YouTube. 90,000 views.
Awesome.
Oh, insane experience. But so Goldberg's closed down. 7-8 years later, Knuckle Up moves into the same spot, and they find me, and they're like, "What are you doing? You're one of our old kickboxers. Come back and fight for us." And I'm like, "I'm doing stick fighting and stuff mostly these days." And they're like, "What is that?" I show them a video. I'm working for them the following month. So I'm back in my old home teaching, and that was pretty much a card to do whatever I wanted to. I blended Silat and FMA with MMA. I've got a pretty deep background in jiu-jitsu. I've started probably about 12 people on their path to black belt. They've all surpassed me. Again, I don't care about rank, and I'm not willing to put up with a lot of stuff that some people will to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu under some of those guys. I actually threw my brown belt away. So I'm like recognized as a purple belt after 21 years in jiu-jitsu. I'm a purple belt under Carlson Gracie. But with that, I got a chance to fight with some really game guys that were really good at either Thai or jits or, boxing. And they were always willing to go at the nerdy stick fighter guy. I used to wear John Lennon glasses, real tight haircut, stuff like that. And every one of them would be like, where did you come from? I'm like, well, I love fighting. I got jujitsu, I got Thai, I got boxing. Wait, what more do you want? And Benjamin's big philosophy, I think this is a Burton Richardson thing, was never let your opponent have something you don't have. So if they have Silat, you need to know Silat. If they have boxing, you need to know boxing.
Yeah,
they don't know TKD, they're going to fall for the swing kick every time, stuff like that.
I got the question on that, man. I got to find that out. He's my teacher. I got to see if he's been holding back on me.
Right. He's keeping you on a short one, man. He knows you're a jumper. You're a leapfrogger. That's what. Now I got that through Benjamin. It might have just been quoted. They had done some seminars together back before Ben came down from Wisconsin as well.
I got to ask Burton about him then. Burton had to have liked him. They did something together. Burton really had to appreciate him. Yeah.
So, well, it was funny. He got that.
Ben.
The story I got, Burton saw him and goes, "Hey, I recognize you from the academy." Woo. And this would have been like 96, 95. And Benjamin's like kind of looking at him like, "You didn't recognize me?" He goes, "Yeah, sometimes I get hired by these like weird, militias and stuff like that. And I can never really tell who they are until I get off the plane. I'm like, nah, I'm not teaching the white supremacist, or something like that." So, the joy of being, pre-internet. But I would go in and take my sarong and wrap it around my hands and say, put on your 8-ounce gloves, punch me in the face. If you get me, I got jits, I can cover, and have those young guys come after me, blaze into glory, and do everything I could to try to pull off those old, the sarong techniques and stuff like that. And, sometimes that shit works. Sometimes I got really good with the bandana. I think I had some on the workbench, and I would put a fencing helmet on the Thai boxers and say, beat the crap out of me. Just realize every time I snap this thing in your face that you might get cut somewhere around the eye.
Or your
have
eyes.
some, have a little verisimilitude or something like that, a little believability in my story here. And so I would just snap that thing in their faces. There's videos of me doing it with a guy who's a little smaller than me, but his technique was off the charts with Thai, one of Manu Into's like top dudes back in the day. And I used that thing for range. But then as soon as they would start covering up, then I would loop it over and start using knees. And so the flexible weapon aspect versus an MMA fighter, to me, I was one of the best proving grounds for those techniques. Because, in C-Lot, I do that right straight punch. I got my right foot in front. I'm static. I'm watching you do your technique, and then I fall on the ground. That's how you learn it, but you have to pressure test it. And
no, you got if you want to, if you want to know what's going to work for you in the street, you better pressure test. That's something that you want to put in your arsenal as far as, God forbid. 100%.
Is it going to work?
Yeah.
I think one of the guys on your page, Conrad Buoy, who's like one of my heroes, man, that guy trains everything. Buoy the tourist, and since he was a kid, I'm just like, wow. But he had a comment about fighting, and I got into a fight with a coke addict, or cokehead. I guess he's not an addict. He's a good dude. He's just in a bad day. And he tried to slap me. And the second time he tried to slap me, I pulled a Kenjit Siko. And on the way down, he grabbed my face. And we both went flying over a bar stool and broke the bar stool. And I was just like, as I hopped up, I'm like, I'm never doing that shit again, but at least I got it out of my system in a situation where, three of his buddies weren't there to pepper me when I was getting up, whatnot. I ended up flattening the guy and, all this other stuff. But I don't use Kenjit Siko in self-defense anymore because of that grab and that hold. If the guy if he's not your uke, he may not move the way you want him to. And
I know, there's stuff I really like in C-Lot. Like I love the dive entry. I love the double bind. Like there's stuff I really I know works against like wrestlers. I tried it out. And all that. But there is some stuff you do kind of have to like weed through. I love the off balancing stuff that can lead to the sweeps and all that. But you're right, though. You have to get with MMA guys and all that, wrestlers, because they're going to give you the biggest problems, man. You know what I mean? They got A-frames, they base out. You're not just going to go up there and sweep their leg. If you don't have any balancing. So, I like what you're talking about. That's so true. You know what I mean? You just can't take for granted it's all going to work just because you got it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, Sensei says it works, so it's got to work. Stuff like that. I've kicked a guy straight in the junk and had him go, you son of a bitch, and I'm like, no, that was supposed to flatten you.
Yeah,
and stuff like that had just run right through me. Like,
I know, and this is why I know it's like, not to get off talking about this whole women's thing I'm going to get, but yeah, you're right, though. You just, like, adrenaline, man. Just because you get somebody there doesn't mean, it's like fight ending.
It's scary.
They look at you and you're like, no effect, and they're like still coming.
Yeah, that's the worst. It's like those dreams where you're hitting the guy as hard as you can. It's like ding, ding, ding. I had one of my little bar stories. I was at a pub Sunday night trying to get dinner, and an old like wino guy I knew from the neighborhood was there, and he was trying to sneak a beer when the bartender wasn't watching. And I worked for the valet company, but there was a boot company on the other side of that same group. And those three guys from the boot company were in the same bar, and they were big. Two of them were, 6'3". One of them was about 5'8", but really puffy, really muscly guy. And he was under one of our local Wing Chun heroes. They called him a disciple. I'm not dropping any names. So I knew those guys, and we were all pals or whatever. And then they started messing with my buddy Rich, the old wino. And I leave him alone, go away, just find someone else to play with. And then he tried to sneak that beer, and then the little puffy guy like lost his mind. So they were outside burning the dude with cigarettes. And I came out and I said, look, you got to stop this right now. And the little dude started chasing the guy around the parking lot. And I look, this has got to stop. Yeah. So I stepped out from behind a vehicle, like a van or something like that. And the guy came right into my face. Now, not knowing he was a Wing Chun guy, had I known, I would have kept my distance. You know, I would have approached this a little differently. But I just thought he was a big gorilla from, you know, boot company. Yeah. And he like dodged right and shot left. And I caught a half Nelson and turned around and locked it across his neck. I found out later that Guro Asano likes to do that stuff. Half Nelson as a wrestler is kind of like a fork for a normal human. And so I went right to my favorite toolbox, caught this guy, and then one of the other dudes caught my wino friend, and they were like, oh, yeah, you think you're going to strangle this guy? Look at me. I got him, too. And I said, okay, well, let's race. Let's see who dies first. And I choked my little dude down and dropped him like, you know, laundry. Well, they let my friend go, the wino. And then the big guy goes, well, you're lucky you don't have any sticks. And I said, brother, I just dropped your friend. I'm about to, and I took a big step on the ground, and they, woo, like that. Got my wino friend, put him in the car, started leaving. They were kind of slapping the guy around, waking him back up. And I did the same thing. He was bitching and moaning. I said, look, if you want me to beat your ass, I'll do it right now. And I kind of lurched at him, and they all went back like that. And I started laughing. Well, by the time I got home, I had made, this is probably 2001, 2002. So I had a cell phone. I had called my boss, his boss, all of my friends, everybody I knew that was in like my speed dial on that old flip phone. And when I got home, I basically just ran laps around the house. Same thing with the Kinjit Seiko guy. The adrenaline hits me 5 minutes later or something like that. And it's such a toxic dump for me that I'm like, oh, and then I just take off running. So I try to avoid those situations just due to like the, not the legal ramifications. I'm not going to draw a knife on anybody or
no, I know
unless you're listening. But the dump is that adrenaline dump is something that is really, really hard to handle. You know, are they going to grab a rock? Are they going to be way faster than me? And, you know, is the cardio super good? What do they know that I don't know? How am I going to get through this? And all that shit's playing through my head so fast. And as I engage, as a bouncer, it wasn't as bad because I knew I had guys that were behind me that could help out. But as just like standing in a bar going like, all right, here you go, take it. That's something that only really like sparring and that pressure test can help. It doesn't get rid of it. But if you're comfortable going in the ring and fighting someone you've never met before, or doing grappling against, you know, a bunch of guys, you're on the wrestling team, this school's always whipped your school's ass, you got to go out there and get them. That really helps you kind of organize that adrenaline dump. But when it's out there in the oh my God time, that's where really heavy, like training with MMA guys, because they eat that stuff for breakfast. That's their favorite drug.
The stress inoculation. They know how to manage stress. And if you don't know how to manage stress, I mean, one of the things I tell my students, I mean, if we don't introduce stress in a classroom setting, well, how in the heck are you going to deal with it out there? I mean, it's not going to just magically, you know, pop on with a light switch or anything. It has to be introduced, you know. And we do got a question.
Oh, cool.
Maestro Alvin would like to know, if you choose to answer, why did you throw away your brown belt?
So my my daycare dojo days are behind me now, and I found out 7 years into it, I had bought the place and all this other stuff. The jiu-jitsu instructor was my student. I introduced him to not only Steve Tarani, but his coach here in Atlanta, to Carlson Gracie, all these other guys, that they had not disclosed the history of the location and the people I was working with. And it was completely against my moral standings. And when I questioned the guy and I said, why didn't you tell me about what was going on? He just looked me dead in the face and said, look, let's talk about something else. And I said, no, that's not the way it is. So when COVID came, I had already kind of left the team. I was still doing some no-gi grappling on my own. I actually owned a gi company that I had started with one of those dudes on Facebook, the Pakistani guys. They're like, hey, we want to make your uniforms. I sifted through like 8 or 9 of them and found one that was legit and made some beautiful gis under the name Deep Half.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it got to the point, it was so toxic with this former student, current teacher, whatever, that it wasn't worth it to me to continue to fly any flags that had anything to do with those guys. And that's the sad part of it. That was a 20-year friendship that was thrown away for money and covering for people.
Always comes down fame and fortune, And
you know what the sad part about it wasn't really a fortune. I mean, he's rich, and according to him, he's been rich all along. But I mean, he was knuckling us for like 30 grand a year. And I'm like, you hid this type of behavior for fucking 10 years for 30 grand a year. I mean, that's a salary of a Waffle House manager or something like that.
Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible.
If I were to, and that when you don't have an education, and thank you for the question, man. I love that stuff. When you don't have an education, all you really have to stand on is your name and you know how people perceive you.
Yeah, your integrity.
And so, not a belt guy, not paper tiger, whatever. I know guys that have certificates all over their walls that are, wonderful people and stuff like that, but couldn't fight their way out of a paper sack, and nothing against them. I'm not trying to be a dick.
No, their journey is their journey.
Yeah, 100%, and better that than drinking at the pub or whatever, or wife beating, and you got to get your aggressions out somehow. But yeah, when they turn tides on you, it's like, man, I invested a lot of time in you and gave you all my trust and loyalty, and this is what I get.
Yeah, especially when it's a long-term relationship, and that can't be easy.
So, but I got my purple belt through Benjamin Salas. When Benjamin went away in 2006, I believe it was, we met back up, and I was not aware he was doing this. I moved down to Guatemala kind of on a tip that he had for me, and he ended up being down there. And I got my purple belt through Ray Diogo, who is one of the absolute best of Carlson Gracie's guys. I trained with Todd Medina for a long time in Huntington Beach, and meeting Ray Diogo was like, wow, man, it was like reading, like James Hetfield from Metallica or something like that. I'm like, I've heard all about this guy. This is so cool. And then later on, they had made me a belt in Guatemala with the instructor stripes and stuff on there. And so that thing's staying on my wall forever. It might go back around my waist later, but I'm, with COVID and everything like that, I kind of lost the bug. Yeah,
you want to be rolling around with I know.
It's scary to me. And we talked about the other, FMA has really kind of come into a new world during this. One of my buddies here in Atlanta named Arnold Filomeno has been doing, he's been doing online classes for like 3 or 4 years. And it's really wild that, he teaches in an interactive way. I watched one of his feeds. He sent me a link to it, and I watched it, and it took me a minute to kind of gather what he was doing. And then I watched, and I was like, my God, they're doing, whoa. And, I had to kind of sit there and kind of watch it and be like, damn, son, you're really good at this. And then I tried it. I'm like, angle 1, angle 2.
No, it's
watch your footwork, Timmy. And stuff like that. I was just like, I was a man in the wrong environment. But Arnold really adapted to it well before this stuff.
So he was used to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he really sprang out of his shell in this time. And I think a lot of other guys did. There's a lot of really creative people in FMA.
Some people
and
are
I have
really
to say
good.
that the WEKAF aspect of life really opened up the doors to, it's not just who's the baddest guy in your dojo or your, wherever you train, your park, but that there's badasses all over the country and all over the world. We all speak the same language. We may have a different angle 1 or a different, way of looking at a inside the sweep or something. But a lot of these guys have made a career out of it. A lot of guys have been doing it since, I was a child. And they were the most accepting and inviting group I'd ever run into. And I almost got the crap kicked out of me in '99 by Benjamin because I didn't really like how the judging went in one of my fights. And I fought a guy who is still in like Tiger Paw or whatever that martial arts company is. He's still in those magazines. So it's not like the guy was an overnight sensation. He's still at it. But I didn't like the way I lost a fight to a guy who had basically been disqualified 2 or 3 times during the fight for throwing me and pushing me out of the ring and all this other stuff. But his dad was a rancher in that area and had a lot of money for the tournament and stuff. So I was like, whatever. But I bought a Dos Pares t-shirt. And the following morning for breakfast, I come down to breakfast in this Dos Pares t-shirt, and Benjamin's big smile, like, hey, cool, you look great. I said, well, if you can't beat him, join him. And he was like, I am about to beat the dog. And I was like, oh my God, I saw this face on him I'd never seen before. And I was like, oh, that's my big mouth again.
Yeah.
So, again, I learned humility, and I'm not the greatest guy in the world.
Yeah. I mean, you all go through like life lessons like that, and it kind of recalibrates us, and you pick up the pieces and you keep moving and take, you know what I mean? I want to get to okay. And then I'm seeing another question from Paul. Okay. All right. Obviously, you value sparring. That goes without saying. With your students, I guess, how do you, in other words, maybe there's a little anxiety. They've never done it before. How do you kind of, bridge it where they can get, what do you do as far as making them more comfortable? And do you have, I guess, so to speak, levels when you integrate them into sparring? Maybe like, for instance, for example, hand hunting with a soft stick, and maybe they, whatever, like, what do you, what's your take? What do you do for your students?
Well, now, especially, back in Knuckle Up, there was a lot of challenges, guys wanted to come in and try to take the champ and stuff like that. And so it's just like, put on a helmet. One guy actually told me, he's like, I'm going to take it easy on you. And I beat the crap out of that guy. I was just like, oh, I've had enough of you. I actually remember pushing the helmet down on his head, and he was like, no, we don't have to go now. And I'm like, yes, your mouth has gotten you a beating. But now that I'm older, hopefully wiser, something like that, I play a game that is it's a leg finding game. And so you stand in a really awkward right leg in front stance with your hands back like this, and you let the guy swing like a 1 down at your leg, or like, a lower 4, something like that. And you do the Illustrissimo style footwork. I'm not going to badger the pronunciation. So you step back in place. You let the stick pass that zone, and then you put your foot back in place. And as soon as it plants, then you attack. And it's kind of a 1-for-1 thing.
Okay.
And it gets them comfortable moving. You see a guy that looks like he wants to fight. He's got his hands up. He's got this stick going from one side to the other, and you're getting your range and your timing built up. After that, then we do hand game. And a lot of times I do play with padded sticks. I was with Gindrano when he was helping the guys at Bunau develop the padded blade. So that was something that Victor would show up for seminars 2-3 times a year. And he would always say, here's my next evolution of this. Let's take it to the next level. And so I like the hand game a lot, that defanging the snake, things of that nature. And then in the end, taking them to soft stick with helmet and gloves, WEKAF body armor, live stick, no body armor, helmet and gloves. And that's about as far as I'll take it. In the younger days, we did a lot more stick grappling when I was at Knuckle Up, because most of the guys that came to me had a grappling background. So it was a lot easier to say, okay, from the guard, I'm going to do this fang thing like a Denny choke, or, blah, blah, blah. Where if you don't know the guard, then we have to go backwards and try to rebuild.
Yeah, no, but I mean, in that element, I mean, obviously you would take advantage of that. I mean, which, you should have done. Like one of the things, 2 of my best training partners, they're grapplers, they're wrestlers. And so we compliment each other, because I'm obviously the oddball. And, but I tell you, man, it made my clinch freaking overhook and underhook so freaking good, because that's their world. And they said, no, here, let me find, not that they're very extensive in stick, or, that's their area, but still, though, within that range, they're able to, like, hey, if you were to do this, maybe, but I'm telling you, so I dig what you're saying. Like, if you got the guys there, take advantage of it. You know what I mean?
100%. It makes it that much easier. And if you have, the submission game, whether it be, Shudo was one of my favorites. As a wrestler, I was really into the shoot fighting aspect of it. Billy Robinson, kind of stuff like that catch can stuff. Yeah. I was taught that in elementary and middle school by a coach that would be like, never use this in a match. but you're my little brother's best friend, so let's go train and stuff. So we were guillotining guys, back in the 80s and stuff like that. But, I learned that I can get creative with my Americana shapes or whatever just because of the C-lot tie-ups. I would use a stick in my C-lot side position to, break the elbow or whatever it was, put the arm inside there. And so it would turn those guys on to where they'd be like, dang, dude, I was just coming in here to kind of, screw with this guy. Yeah. And I just learned the craziest thing. So on Sundays at Knuckle Up, we would have an open mat. I would have open mat for about an hour and a half for Collie. And then, as we called it back then, and then we would go upstairs and do an open mat with the MMA guys. And mostly for me at my age, I was 10, 15 years older than the guys. It was mostly just jits. And my nickname was One Time. And they would be like, dude, you're only going to get me with that one time. I'm like, don't need it after that. If I can do it to you, I can do it to some fat guy at the gas station. Yeah. And, whatever it might be. But those proving grounds were insane because guys that are like Douglas Lima, who is a Bellator champion, he was on the mat with us all the time. He was one of our guys when he was 17. His brother, Diego's a UFC contender. Rafi and Junior Asunsao, both UFC guys. Just big names. One of our guys is fighting. I hated Thai boxing these guys. I was so old and so scrawny compared to the guy. One of our guys is fighting this weekend. Warren Thompson is back in the ring and stuff like that, doing super heavyweight Muay Thai. And these guys are just banging. And they'd be like, oh, here comes a martial arts nerd. But, man, I'd take, one of the super guys try a shoulder throw on me, and I slid down and took his back, dumped him like I did as a wrestler, and held him until the end of the time limit. And it was like I stole his car. He was like, what was that? What was that? I'm like, hi, I can fight too. I'm not just a little, Karate Kid nerd or whatever you want to call it. No offense. But, when you take the sparring and wean the guys onto it, it builds some attributes. And one of Benjamin's big stories was, Chris, I'm not just going to give you, the key to a F1 car and send you to Daytona. You'd crash in the first turn. You might not even make it off the starting line because of the throttle. But if we start an electric car, move our way up to an outlaw, move our way up to, go from golf cart to da. By the time you're ready for an F1 car, your eyes are going to be tuned in, your hand speed, everything is going to be on point. And you're going to be ready to fight it. That, like the David Foggy's question, what happened when I fought Master Ray Dominguez? I had an awesome fight. I did pour my Gatorade down the inside of my WEKAF gear, and it looked like I peed myself. And I kind of felt like I was about to. But that was in Cebu or in Mandaue City, in the Filipino corner of the arena. 3 Filipino judges, 1 Filipino ref, and this tiny guy. I've got a picture of he and I standing together where heads are equal, and he's 2 steps up on a staircase, and I'm standing next to it. He was that big. And we fought like tigers, man. It was all Largo. I had heard about Lightning Eskrima, and after the fight, Salas was like, so what style do you fight with? And he's like, oh, my grandfather's style. I was like, who's that? He's like, Benjamin Lima Luma. Like, oh, my God, this grandfather. Found out later that's just what he called him. But, I was like,
yeah, I like that system. Like, I have a
yeah, no, that stuff is lit up. I am one of Asher Mike's fanboys. I don't know if you know Mike. I don't know his name at all, but Asher Mike Pinzon or something. That dude is legit.
No, Asher
Mike.
No, I had.
He's like a concert violinist and a pilot and an escrimador, and he's the kind of thing you want your kids to be like.
He's under Professor Giucano.
100%.
Yeah,
dude.
No, he's legit.
Professor Bart is a hero of mine as well.
Yeah.
But just to see those guys, the picture of me standing with him is one of them, but the one at the end of the fight, the referee is holding Dominguez's hand and looking at me, and in the background there's about 80 or 90 Filipinos going, yeah, and they were just lit up. It was they were like, dude, that was the most exciting fight of the night.
Right.
And for an entertainment fighter, in tournaments, I fought for me and my team and my coach, but I really kind of fought for the crowd. I wanted to hear that noise. When I
Yeah.
did Thai boxing, I had a smiley face on my pants and real silly music and screaming and yelling the whole way down to the ring, and a lot of dopey stuff and jiu-jitsu matches, trying shit that no one else would. Not Sakuraba but try stuff, but like pretty close.
Yeah, like
So I was always looking to like really elicit the flying. Trying to elicit the crowd's response. I really want. Now, I wouldn't talk to him or anything like that. I was serious about my fight, but I really wanted him to say like, dang, that kid is crazy, or that guy's slippery, or whatever it might be. And that the fight in Cebu was awesome.
Yeah, no,
we had done
wow.
During the lead up to that, we would fight in bars, in the rings. That Atlanta had a lot of bars with rings on their front porches and stuff. Really weird. So we would fight after pro wrestling matches, or we would fight after tough man matches. And in WEKAF body armor, all the bikers and stuff would be like, "You guys are fags." And then with no body armor, the same guy would be like, "You're killing him, stop," stuff like that. But we would go out there and just beat the stuffing out of each other. And I didn't want that for my guys right off the bat. I didn't want to scare the hell out of them and say, this is how you have to perform.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I don't teach a lot of self-defense is I taught a lot of self-defense at those daycare dojos. And it was like, this lady can't even get off the ground. Why is she?
Don't even get me started on
geezer,
self-defense, man. Oh my God.
They want to learn how to cane fight, but they need to walk with the cane. So
it's weaponized.
I don't know if this is going to work.
That's my argument.
So it's hard to kind of find that group, find an Asher, Mike, for your system. Some young kid who's really smart and really go-getter and wants to trade blows. And like, not saying I don't know the guy, but he seems like he's got a whimsical style about him. He's having fun. He's not just out to hurt his opponent. He wants to whip his ass, but he also is having fun and wants that guy to have a little fun too.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about him. As far as a person, I've had Lysandra, what I think actually who was my first female guest, just in the pure FMA context, and they trained together, and his name came up, and I've heard nothing but just really good things about him and all that. But I got a couple more questions, Chris.
Hey, cool.
All right, so would you consider stress adrenaline management cross training, and how would it look like if not being be a sports psychologist? How would it look like? If you want to take this first, and I can chip in after you.
Kind of like the jiu-jitsu model is a good one. Where you're training something in an environment where you have an uke, you're like, all right, let me, work on my omoplata, whatever it is. And then 30 minutes later, you're slapping hands and trying to get that technique from the guy who's trying to either do that technique on you or whip your ass with something else. And I really like that. But I think the guys that have it the best are the Thai boxers. If you ever watch a young Thai boxer in Thailand, it looks like he's half asleep when he's walking down to the ring. They got their eyes half open. Boom, boom, boom. They're out there. Their hands are up. They're real casual. They're kind of patting around. The first 3 rounds are just for gambling anyway. So they're just kind of like feeling each other out in the beginning of the fights. But I always like that mentality. I like that calm, collective idea going into the fight. I found as a wrestler that if I could say something when I shook my opponent's hands at the beginning of the fight, that I could, get them off kilter right off the bat. Yeah. And what we would do, and they would shake our hands, to be a smart ass, a lot of them would say good luck. And I would just laugh hysterically. And that usually kind of tilted the guy like, what the hell? And the next thing you know, headlock, hip toss, cradle, pin, I'm sitting in the stands with a big chewing, something like that. And that was kind of my modest MO. I really wanted to get to that level in wrestling after, God, I was like 8 years, to where I'd been getting my butt kicked the first 3, never won a match. Second, 4 or 5 years into it, I started getting, good consistency, decent, percentages. But by my 11th grade year, I was like, dude, I'm going to whoop. One guy made me go to the end of the fight, and I was like, I am not doing that again. I'm coming at this a whole new angle. So stress management, it's always going to come on the mat. With jiu-jitsu, it's going to come for training, and then getting out there and fighting in the ring. Yeah. One of my, I guess FMA buddies, you could call him that, he would never fight. He would never spar with us. He would never do anything. But he was also a jiu-jitsu guy. And so I'd be like, hey, I'm going to do a tournament with one of my students, blah, blah, blah. Nope, I'm doing that. And I guess he made some claim like, I'm not doing it until I'm a black belt or something. You know, he got his black belt, so good on him. And then he started fighting, and he lost the fight. And it was a very boring, slow fight. Neither of them wanted to lose and blah, blah, blah. But after that, he was like, oh, man, you know, he got the bug. He'd never had that adrenaline dump. He'd never had that, like, I got to go out in a couple minutes. What's going to happen? Is it going to be good? Am I going to get hurt? You know, am I going to look like a fool? Am I going to piss myself? You know, all these things are going through your head. And I think having the ability to basically compartmentalize that, say, look, I want to go out and have some fun. I want to go out and whip this guy's ass, and I want to make a good show for my coach and my team. Those three things pretty much.
Yeah, I think it was good answer. Actually, Sam, he kind of just a weird question. No, Sam, I don't think it's a weird question at all. In my opinion, you have to, in gradual increments, introduce stress to your students and all that, because if you make it too much in the beginning, they're going to get freaked out and they may quit. So you just do in gradual increments. One of the things I use, to me, and this is just for me, what I do for my students, empty hand against knife is one I use because their stress inoculation is like right off the charts with that. But again, just going in gradual increments. So you, like anything else, you build on it, you make, and then let it grow, and like within them and all that, and just without being too overwhelming in the beginning. And I hope both of our answers helps with that question. But thank you for the question, though. A good one.
Yeah, big time. Good on you.
Yeah, and we got okay. Before we get to Hog Mountain, Paul wants to know: have you ever trained with Bart Vell? He is in Florida. Bart Vell, way back, early UFC or Japan.
You said Art Vell, A-R-T?
No, Bart Vell. Bart.
Oh, Bart Vell. Oh no. You know, the guy I mentioned at the very beginning, John Kunkel, the restaurateur that talked me into doing Jingyi and Muay Thai. He said Filipino knife fighter to me, the first one to say that. I caught up with him in about 2006, and I was trying to kind of gauge where he was. I knew he was down there in Florida, and he'd been running around with Carlson's guy, Conan Silveira, the giant jiu-jitsu guy from back in the 90s.
I remember
their wives were dog walking buddies or something in Miami Beach. But when I caught up with Johnny, I was like, man, so are you doing anything? I know you've been, running your restaurant and making your fortune and stuff, but are you still training? And he's like, God, it's the worst. And I'm like, what's up? He goes, you ever heard of Bart Vell? And I'm like, yeah, man, the big fucking judo guy, right? The big, ugly dude. And he's like, that guy hurts everybody. He goes, we go in and roll, and if you have to roll with Bart, he's going to put you in the hospital. He's going to crush you.
He was a big
He's nearly
guy.
7 feet tall.
Yeah.
He's 209,000 pounds. He's this massive monster of a guy. And
huge.
I never got a chance to meet the guy, be in a room with him, whatever. But I've heard a lot of really cool things about outside of just, crushing the people on the floor with him. I've heard he's a really neat guy. Coming from the Inosanto background, it's kind of bad business with Yuri Nakamura and the Japanese Shudo guys. They don't really, that's issues that I have nothing to do with.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But with him as a dude and as a training guy, I heard he's put some really good guys on the mat. But if you go at it and if you get anything on the guy, you're going to pay for it for a while.
Man.
And that's how Obaki was. Not Obaki himself. Obaki's name was Tim Catalfo, and he was a pancrase and shoot fighter. But the one that would do that was named Robbie Rage, and he was a WCW guy that also fought in Japan. And Robbie would tear your shoulder out of the socket just, as soon as looking at you.
No thanks.
But he was one of my buddies from the nudie bar, so he'd always keep a good eye out for me if my mouth got the best of me. I was always glad that Robbie was hanging around. But
we're going to, folks, we are now going to jump into the Hog Mountain. For those you don't know, Chris has been making weapons for quite some time. This is his Facebook page. And what it is basically on Facebook, his page is Hog Mountain Tool and Tactical. So if you guys want to look up, you can see. I'll put some more pictures up and all that. But again, oh sure, yeah, 100%. All his pictures are there, what he makes. But again, this is his Facebook page for those who want to check it out. All right, and so all right, let's jump in that. What was the incentive? I mean, when and why?
I got into it a couple different reasons. One of them was Victor Gindrano. He came to see me in 2008 when I first kind of brought him in, and he was a really interesting dude. He'd been around a lot, and he was into all kinds of stuff. He was a photographer and videographer and all this other stuff. And I can't remember why, but we had to run by my parents' house. They lived real close to my old home. And he was showing me something. He's like, Chris, this kukri is really cool, but it's not an FMA blade, and it's plastic. I've seen a bunch of them. They kind of have like a wood texture to them, but it was made out of some form of plastic. I said, dude, Victor, my dad's a chemical engineer. The guy can fix and build anything. Let's take it to him and see what he thinks. So my old man looks at it, scratches his chin, and says, we can make these here. You know that, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, no, this is just polyethylene, tetracycline, whatever, PET. And, I may even have some in the basement. Hang on. 10 minutes later, he comes walking up with a cutting board and said, this will do the trick. There's a bandsaw out in the garage if you want to make one right now. I'm like, well, I'm entertaining my friend. I'll come back. So Victor was a really idealistic, kind of visionary type martial arts guy. He didn't write down anything. Poor all of us. Danny Garcia, the other guys, Steve Del Castillo that worked with him. He didn't structure anything, but it was always really great to talk to him. So we always talked, and he would kind of guide my hand. Chris, you should make a machete like the machetes you use at your house, because your students, I would always bring them over to my house to cut the kudzu we get down here. Oh, okay. Called that functional machete training. So my guys had good blade orientation, not just stick fighting and stuff. And so anytime he would come and do a seminar, he would call me and say, make, however many students you can get, make machetes for them, or make this for them, or whatever it might be. And then I would make a few pieces for his spec, just on a bandsaw in my dad's basement or in his garage or whatever it was. And then in 2016, I had met Basti Carlos of the famous Carlos brothers. And they were coming. Basti goes back and forth like every Christmas. And he was like, I have this sword that's Tony Diego's sword. I want you to make a copy of it, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And so I was really lucky. This is when he was still here. I got a chance to play with this sword, and there was some history to the sword. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't exactly the sword he thought it was, I guess. But I made these giant, like 32-inch plastic swords out of the material that we all use. And I got the material advice, and I always quote people I learned from Tuan Dionaldo, because he makes a massive amount of these things. Ray Dionaldo is the king
when I was with Sayoc.
Black plastic swords. Yeah,
he did all the weapons.
He taught me. What's that?
When I was with Sayoc, he was doing all the weapons.
Yeah. Oh, dude, he's insane. That guy's a human Swiss Army knife, man. I love Dionaldo. And so when I got with Carlos, it was like, let's do this, let's do that. So now I'm making these larger format pieces, but I'm not really happy. I'm a guy that can't really cut straight. And so everything was like a snowflake. They didn't really line up. So I knew I had to move to AutoCAD or some form of mechanical cutting. And during that time, I picked up a blade consultant. And now my blade consultant is, up until recently, been very, very quiet about what's up. He would send me boxes with pieces like your sword rack behind you. He would send me pieces and say, Chris, make this, make one of these only for me, make this, you can sell these to people. And he had kind of like restrictions around what it was. His name is Style, and he goes by Style Allah here on Facebook. But he was like, look, okay, cool. He's a man, that guy has just opened up and given me so much. And literally, I think I first shook his hand in maybe 2018 at Blade Show, when Blade started getting like, oh my God, we need to go to Blade.
Okay.
We got him to come down and with some of his CEO guys, but he must have sent me, I would say dollars to donuts, probably about $10,000 worth of stuff without ever seeing my face in person, and said, make me, one of each of these. And then you can make these for public display and public sale, and that these are for me and my group. And I probably made his group over the years about 200 swords total for the CEO guys all across the country.
Oh, wow.
Did a lot with the guys on Knife or Death. A lot of them were competitors on Knife or Death. So we had a lot of, kind of group cohesion. I was kind of like don't train with them, but part of the family.
Yeah.
On the outside. But that really took me to the next level because, like the Taliban, I don't know if you can see this thing. I'm backwards and too close. This guy came right out of his, it's like sighting in a scope. This thing came right out of his collection. And I sent it to him and he made a comment like, you need to make the blade thicker. And some guys are going to want a larger blade catcher on top. So remember that, And then what else came from Styles' collection? I don't even, Jesus, I didn't plan for this. So he gave me a Chris Cutlery Chris and said, if you have to make a Moro blade, I would rather you not, because that's, my heritage, Moro Filipino or Moro fighting arts is different than FMA.
Yes, yeah.
If anybody's really hard on you about the Moro stuff, here's a Chris you can use. But please don't make a Barong. Please don't make a Campilan. Please don't make a Panabas. Just stick to the Visayan and the Luzon style blades, if you don't mind. And I was like, dude, you've already given me more than anybody has ever trusted me with, in years. So yeah, whatever you want is golden. And we don't talk as much as we used to, but I still hear from him every once in a while. When I was gearing up for Knife or Death, I was on the phone with him, I don't know, a couple times a week. And when I had the dojo, after my morning routine was done, I would have a couple hours before the kids would come in for daycare and stuff like that. And so I would get on the horn with him and be like, all right, man, I got a question. Or, hey, I'm trying to build an ITAC and I have a question about this and this and this. So he sent me the design from one of his students, became probably my most popular blade, this ITAC here. Get out of there.
Okay.
And so this is not from his collection, but from one of his guys.
Okay.
And it was before his student bought it. I was like bidding on it on eBay, and I lost the damn thing. And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, one of my guys has it, so I'll send you all the specs on it."
Now that's
stuff like that.
That's your most popular selling one, right there.
The ITAC is definitely the most popular. It's the one that Guro Arnold from Narzo from Illustrissimo uses. And I just sent a batch of them. I think they just arrived. I sent them in probably January to the Philippines, and I think they're just arriving now or just arrived. And for me, it's kind of like it's a Luzon style blade, and this one's got the scales on it, so it's a little different than my normal. I don't think I have a wrapped one here, but at 27 inches, God, it's going backwards. It's killing me, Dino. This thing has a lot of like utilitarian function to it.
Okay.
The most popular pairing I have. Here we go. Is with a barang from the region called Pangasinan. And this is actually a work knife. I mentioned my friend Michael Smith and Basti Carlos the other day. This is a knife that Michael Smith's wife had. And as we were getting one of my students ready for Knife or Death, her name's Kat Lopez. We had all our long blades out on the trunk, and one thing led to another. I'm measuring this thing off and fixing it up. And it's the one thing that I've deviated to for a movie is now I make them in aluminum, but I'm not really sure how this is going to come out in the big picture. So I'm dabbling in aluminum blades, which are really fun to make. And you can probably see that comment about me not being able to cut straight here. God, get it somewhere I can see, damn thing. So yeah, they're oblong and
yeah, but I mean,
it's not all plumb yet, but this is my first try at aluminum blades.
I mean, here, folks, here's
so I decided
on the page
to use the ITAC because it was such a recognizable piece of mine.
Yeah.
Another one that's getting a lot of jazz are my Kalinga style axes. These are my personal ones, so they have scales on them, but I make scales for any one of them. I have two versions. This is version 2.
Awesome.
It's a little thinner. It's got a thinner shaft, just like a little bit more traditional, even though it doesn't have that weird little finger sticking out of it. this one I worked with Victor Gindrano on. And when I got the design and gave it to him, he's like, that's really badass. And then I mentioned the guy earlier, Jerry Hossam, who's a real famous, God, somebody move here, a real famous knife maker here in Atlanta. And he's kind of the guy that came up with this. I call it the Blue Falcon from the old cartoon, but he's the one that really put the tactical Kalinga style axe out there, along with maybe Winkler or one of those Soyak guys also had a pointy, like a door breaker type axe about the same time. And so Jerry and I worked on this, and I modified this one to my own needs. But we worked on these things back in 2014, 2015. His kid would train with me, Alex, who's also an accomplished knife maker. And he would bring his dad's most recent design in plastic. Here, what do you think of this? And I'm like, oh, it's awesome. Okay. Take this into your old man and let him see what he thinks of mine. And so again, I always try to give props to the people I worked with. Yeah. So as I moved through, I got to the point to where I taught myself AutoCAD. I'm cutting these things at a water jet cutter and then bringing them home and finishing them, the rest of them over here in this mess that I call my workshop, which is below the rest of the house. And I worked with the guys I mentioned, Strider Knives. I worked with Strider for a long time, so I'll make replicas of their stuff for them. And then my hero, my current knife making hero is Mikkel Williamson. Okay, and he makes this is the Red E, which these are more value priced. Access lock on that one. Woohoo! Then Mikkel's customs are, $1,000, some $1,500-$1,800 pieces, and they're beautiful. I could never afford any of them.
And $1,800, man. The most I spent was Bostonelli, and I was just like, this is insane. I know.
Oh, dude. And Mikkel's stuff, the stuff he does with Chad Nichols Damascus and the fat carbon inlays and all. I mean, it's every penny is well spent on one of Mikkel's knives. They're works of art. You know what I mean? They're works of art. Yeah, I mean, we got Chad Bailey. Chad. Hey, I know Chad.
Chad. I'm sporting it.
There it is.
But so then, okay. So what what do you do? What do you offer for sticks? Like, what do you do?
Sticks. This is a bad example, but I have tiger sticks.
What about trainers?
See that? They have that kind of blackened pattern on them.
Okay, yep.
And then I don't know if I have. I might have to get out of my little chair here.
I'm just curious, what do you sell for trainers?
I do regular rattan.
Okay.
So like we got there's a big influencer out there. I like to use that name because he's old like me. But John Border does a page Bladed on Facebook. I think you post your stuff on there.
Yeah. No. I know it.
Super cool guy. But he's nuts. He's like, dude, cut him at 24, and that one's diameter is different than this and that and the other thing. So for guys like that, I also make this polymer. It's a homopolymer stick. And these things are, I haven't broken one yet. And I'm not going to call them indestructible. I think Cold Steel has that trademark. But I've banged on like concrete semi-poles at gas station type barriers. I've hit dumpsters with them. I beat on trees. And these synthetics are super cool. They're a little heavy. I will say, like, compared to rattan, they're a little heavy. But I now wrap the handles. This is one of the first ones. I wrap the handles out to about 1/3 of the stick length with tennis racket tape. And it eats up a lot of that vibration, because if you're hitting with plastic, there's going to be a lot of vibration. It's like an old Daffy Duck thing where you're shaking. But as far as sticks goes, I basically got the rattan probably about 3 months ago and started playing with that. And I have a guy that burns the tiger patterns on for me. And then I took some of my garage door stuff, some brackets off a door I fixed, and now I burn my own nodes like that. So I try to keep my hand in the process as much as possible. I've had offers to make live blades in China for, really cheap, but I'm like, not yet. No, I've got a sheet of CPM 154, real glamorous blade steel. It's 2.5 by 4, cost me like $1,000, and it's sitting at a machine shop right now, waiting for me to finish off the drawings so I can start doing either the ITAC maybe the axes. I've got a little karambit type thing. I worked with a guy named Jason Crome a couple years ago. It's called the Platypus because it's like 5 different knives glued together, and it's an affront to God because it's a straight bladed karambit. But no offense to straight bladed karambit guys, I'm not a huge fan of it until I made this thing, and I'm like, wow, this thing's really cool. So I might make the Platypus a live blade as well. But you know, going back to the first thing we talked about, kids, family, career, time is my enemy. And I found that the plastic stuff works really well. The rattan sticks are easy to work and kind of quick and clean. And I try to keep a turnaround of between like 4 and 6 weeks. If I go over 6 weeks, I feel like I'm screwing my customers. And so I try to keep quick turnaround. So recently I've kind of bulked up on some of my inventory, if you will. So I have blanks of Itacs and Talibongs and some of these axes and stuff on hand. So hopefully I can say, yeah, you know, PayPal me the cash and I'll get this thing out to you on Monday, you know, or something like that. I'd rather be like that than like, all right, dude, I got to get 10 more pieces before I can put an order together and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So everything is very seat of the pants. I do it all very small and I don't really make enough money. There's not enough profit in it to like categorize it as an actual business. So it is kind of under the table.
Yeah,
but when it comes to like with what I've made so far in 2021 and what I'm spending and giving out on the these are donations to a film company doing a movie about Gabriela Salang, the Joan of Arc of the Philippines. Okay. It's more of, you know, like it's a sponsorship deal where I hope I'll get a few back. Who knows? But I'm taking a hit on it that's going to wipe any profits I would have made this year out.
I mean, you're doing it for a good cause, you know?
Yeah, 100%. The guys they make crazy films. They make crazy films. So I'm hoping this one is one that we can all look back on and be like, that was well worth watching. You know,
no, that's awesome.
They made Elephant Stomp. If you can find that one, it's a streamer. It's wild, man. It is. It's like Bloodsport meets, you know, Tekken or something like that. It's pretty crazy.
No, I want to pull up your page.
But the cool thing about Hog Mountain is it opens a lot of doors for me. Like, here we go. It's a guy named Wei Sun Johnny Sai out of Chicago, and he designs a lot of knives with tops. And this is the Kumakage. All right, C-U-M-A. I don't know if you can even read that. It's backwards on my end. But this thing's powder coated. It weighs about 4 pounds. It's got snake eyes from G.I. Joe on the logo. And the artist Robert Adkins and Wei Sun Johnny worked together on a few pieces. So he's got one called a Thackeray and then this thing that are in the comic book. And I'm the guy that makes the trainers for them.
Oh, that's awesome.
So for me, yeah, I think that's really neat. I really liked the G.I. Joe comics when I was, you know, like in my early middle school and late elementary and stuff like that. So it was like, oh, man, I get to do something for yeah, absolutely.
No, that's awesome.
And then, yeah, I worked with Mikkel on a lot of his projects. So anything that he puts out, I try to make a couple that we can have at the table when he comes in. He's in Denmark. So when he comes in for Blade Show, I try to display a few things that we've done together. One of them is this big Buoy knife I used on that Knife or Death. We made a Buoy that was a little smaller than it should have been for that type of competition, but the guys were very cryptic about what the specs were. They were like 10 inches and more and blah, 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 and it just didn't really make sense. So I was like, let's just make a Buoy knife, base it on what my grandfather had when I was a kid, and let's have some, you know, Mikkelize it, make it, you know, Mikkel Williamson Copenhagen. And so we had a lot of fun. So I got, you know, Jerry Hossam, Wei Sun Johnny Sai, Mikkel Williamson. I'm working with some other like guys that make high-end stuff and just kind of putting things together. I just have a pile of stuff here. I don't know where the brush demon went. Ah, boo. But one of Jerry's knives is being used for a guy called Outdoor Edge, who's got a bunch of cool camping stuff. We did, before COVID crashed us, I made a ceremonial one for Victor Gindrano. Oh, there you go. I can kind of see that.
Oh, I see that.
This is a memorial Itak. Now, Victor was about the size of Ray Dominguez. He came up to about my rib cage. So the Itak, this is out of my personal collection. This is I believe it's an 18-inch long piece altogether. So I made a little bit more diminutive blade for my old friend Victor, and stuff like that. So it's kind of a neat thing. You mentioned Professor Hokano.
Yeah.
I've got he's got a couple of my blades. Romy Macabacall has some of my blades. They've been gifts from people. Bobby Tabuada has some of my stuff. So as I mentioned yesterday, this is a chance for a guy that's looking at like the twilight of stick fighting and saying, what am I going to do to stay relevant? How am I going to continue moving forward when I don't have time to train. I'm too old. I'm rickety. I can't do my Harimau like I used to because I can't get up off the ground. Whatever. I can still get up. But what am I going to do for the next level of my training? What am I going to, how do I learn more about this art? And so having someone like Style working with me, like literally giving me the history of the Zanzibar. I mean, like what? And, you hear stories about it being from Africa and stuff like that.
I did hear that, and I didn't know what to make out of that when I heard that initially. I mean, I was interested in the information, but I didn't jump on the bandwagon. Yeah, it's. I think because of the striping, people said no, it's Africa zebra. You know what I mean?
When you go to the Philippines, like we were in Caban Market, which is my Aussie friends who were like, that's a real dodgy place, mate. And it was like, hell yeah, let's go that way. And they're like, no. But they're little stalls where they sell work knives and stuff all over the place. And you see that stuff everywhere. So it's not just like, oh, that's African and designed because of the dark wood. And I think it's a tie-in with the city or Zanzibar, I think is some mythical place. It might even be real. I haven't done my geography homework in a while. But it was basically a blade for you're in this like sands, like without, and bar like barrio. Like when you leave town, they would give you this sword, to go make your fortune. You're out of here, young man. We hope you come back for the holidays, but here's your Zanzibar because we're going to miss you. And we want you to remember you're from Leyte. And, when you talk to someone from Leyte and be like, is that African sword? You could just see the level rising, like, oh man, what the heck is wrong with you guys? So there's a lot of that kind of discrepancy. And I don't want to be the guy that really brings that out. I'm like, oh, by the way, that's all wrong. But I've heard stories from guys that are like extremely legit in this business, like curators from, the National Archives and stuff go, he's right. I know. I've heard the mix,
and it is compelling. It is interesting. I don't have that dog in the fight, but I am genuinely curious as to, historically speaking, the point of origin. You know what I mean? But yeah, I know. But really, I tell you, but subjective and emotional attachments, man. You start getting that, and people start getting. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, you guys you've kicked many hornets' nests with having Rubio on here and stuff like that. That guy. He's all into that kind of stuff and the history that some of these guys say. I heard one guy say, why would you get your history from someone that didn't graduate elementary school? Sure, they could fight, but are you really going to take up,
forefathers, man, that Celestino Makator, Okano, Mambaki, and Elric, man, that I'm just sitting there like, go ahead, guys.
No. How do you even chime in on something like that? Those guys have done so much work.
I have questions, and I just let them run with it, man. You know what I mean?
That was awesome. I did think the Elric comment yesterday was pretty cool with the hair. I was like, I'll take that. I've heard a lot of other things, and that was good.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
It seems like it. I've listened to a lot of his stuff and kind of commented on some of his posts, and that's going back to the big thing, the Hog Mountain stuff. Hopefully I'll be able to do this for years and build training knives and maybe move into live blades. But really, just having a chance to be in this forum with Sixto and Dax on their little podcast and meeting the people I get to meet. Robert Pelton, the guy from Most Dangerous Places, he's the one that introduced Way Son Johnny to me at Blade Show. And I was like, what the hell are you guys doing at my table? And I had a rack at Mickle's table, and they went through everything. And I was listening to Pelton talk, and I'm like, this guy knows his shit. Yeah. And I have no idea why he's standing. He doesn't know me from a hole in the ground. Why is he bringing his friends over here? And then Ed's Manifesto. You know, are you familiar with who I'm talking about? Ed Calderon. He's oh man, look up Ed's Manifesto. He's been on Rogan a bunch. He's a border specialist. He's a law enforcement and border specialist, and he's worked with some really hairy dudes. He's got one of my attacks, and that's just like, man, this is
you got like famous people that are well,
this takes the cake. Now I could never spend the time and money it would take to go train with these guys, but man, I got blades in New Zealand. I've got several sets around Australia. You know, all around Central. I got with Marco, the crazy Ronan Novacek or whatever his last name is. He helped me design the Croatian axe and the Vengarian
Marco,
and the Zrinski axes. And you know, there again, these guys just, I don't know. I've always tried to be a trustworthy dude and keep, you know, my word and stuff like that. And they come to me and say, look, I want you to help me with this. It's a passion project. What do you got? And I usually make one or two of them and say, what do you think? You know, send me some intel. What do you want? And they're like, no, I want you to sell these. You make them. But this is a cool idea. I think that people will really get into, you know, and stuff like that. So I've had a few projects off to the side where people have just kind of come out of the woodwork and said, hey, we like your stuff. People talk well of you. Let's do some business. I'm like,
no, that's fantastic.
All right, cool.
Wow. Well, we went, this has been phenomenal. We went over time, but I mean, we're good. We're good.
That's me, man. I'm a talker, dude. I'm sorry. I didn't talk about half the things I wanted to talk about.
It was good. No, it was good stuff, you know, and all that.
Cool.
So what I'm going to do is I download this, and then I'll the YouTube link, I'll definitely share on your wall and all that. And you can,
awesome.
You know, you'll see it. But no, this has been fantastic. For folks who want to check this out, his Facebook page is Hog Mountain Tool and Tactical. And again, for those who maybe didn't see it, here it is again. So this is his Facebook page. You'll see all his offerings there and what have you. I'm looking forward to checking it out and all that as well.
A bunch of dopey videos of me sitting down here in the basement.
Yeah. You know, and but again, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this was fantastic.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it, man. It's nice to be recognized. When I got like a tear in my eye several years ago, Salas and I hadn't seen much of each other. Benjamin, my first coach, and I made a comment about something, and he was like, "Why, Chris? You've turned out to be a really good ambassador for the Filipino martial arts. I mean, you know, I support you in any decision you make." And I was like, "It's getting a little dusty in here, man. I gotta run outside for a minute." And that meant a lot to me because, you know, that guy, he didn't have to take me under his wing like he did. We were literally together 5 days a week for 6 years. In the middle between my brother and I, and gave me the tools that I needed, education-wise, the ability to go out and interact with people. Like you said, you were a shy guy. I was overly not shy. But I learned how to hold my tongue a lot because of people like Benjamin. Like, shut the hell up, dude. I'm the one doing the talking. You don't need to interrupt me every 5 seconds. You know, and a lot of people don't have that skill set. They have to be heard when they want to say things.
Yeah.
My children, especially. So, yeah, man, this journey hopefully will continue on. And if I'm working with Mikkel on some stuff with Katanica, the clothing company, which is just off the charts. If you haven't heard of Katanica, I'm a whore. Hang on. See if I can do this without falling down. Woo! My favorite camos. The range shorts they're not cheap, but I put these things on 2 weeks ago, and if you watch my videos, I'm in them like every day. I'm beating the crap out of them. They're the most comfy things I've ever worked on. So we're working on clothing, knives. This week I should have been in Nuremberg, Germany for the IWA show, which is the biggest gun, knife, outdoor military cop, anything convention on the planet. But COVID 2 years in a row kind of put that thing on ice. And, you know, the passport to the world came from not just being like, I want to be the toughest guy in this dojo, but I want to learn who the toughest guys in the world are, and can I hang out with them, and do they like beer? Because I like beer, you know, and all this other stuff. And it's just been amazing. I can't thank you enough for having me on, Dino. You're fantastic.
My pleasure. And I think down the road, I liked when my goal is to get a few guys on blade makers. You know what I mean? That'd be kind of neat. You know, guys can all like, you know, talk about your secrets, and I'll just sit in the background.
There's some great stuff out there. You know, you got some guys, your Kirby Kerbong guy, I was checking his stuff out. I'd seen his stuff in the past.
Yeah.
He actually has a very similar Zanzibar. So that means that I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
That these guys are making, you know, his stuff is very legit. And I like that. I do like the fantasy blades, but you know, Sinizak Crow's mate, I think Volpes. That guy's making some sick stuff, and I've seen Lamont Glass talk about making stuff. So having, you know, multiple plastic guys on might be a rare occasion as well. Because, you know, we're the ones that really facilitate the ass whipping. Johnny's Kumakaje is a fantastic sword, but if you don't have a trainer, man, you might take a leg off or something with that thing, you know. And if you don't have the skill set with a replica of your live blade, it's like a red gun. When you're a shooter, you got to have a red gun to practice with before you go out and start swinging that thing around, man. So that could be a really wild conversation of a bunch of dudes like, yeah, I've been watching you, you dirty dog, you something like that. So I'm amazed. It's grown so much in the last few years. It's such a kick-ass art. And yeah, with the techniques, the technology and the, you know, the connections are growing every day, man. It's super cool.
Awesome, man. But yeah, we'll be in touch for sure. And I appreciate you coming on, and you take care of yourself, man.
You do the same. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. All right, folks. So who is next? I think tomorrow night actually, Guru Vico Manalo. I'm not sure if I'm doing that, or I think Julius might be doing that. Well, I'll know that soon. But at any rate, though, I think that's gonna be tomorrow night, 7 p.m. This is a three-peat week. You know. It just so happens that Manolo in the Philippines, he can only do on the weekends, the weekend morning. So our previous night, just to make it work where everybody can kind of see it. So that's what's going on there. Also, if you haven't already, hit subscribe to FMA Discussion on YouTube. There's some incredible stuff that's going to be raffled off. Some people have been very generous in their offerings, you know, that we'll be giving away. I just got to figure out how to go about doing it, but it will be done live. I think that'll make it more exciting, you know, whether we're going to choose some of the people who are watching or something like that, but I got to figure that out still. But at any rate, though, that's going to be really good. You know, again, some of these knives that people are, I think Danny Terrell, the knife he just made, offered. Harry Hill donated a couple of Kirby Kerbong swords. So just some really, Brian Rodriguez is making something. Some really, really good stuff. But at any rate, good night. Thank you all those who commented, watched, and submitted questions and all that. And we will see you, it looks like probably me or Julius, not sure yet, but tomorrow night.